Better tech, better business. Signal Flow Live. Signal Flow Live is brought to you by the Digital Green Room and by NeuralNet, makers of the Live-to-Air 6 and 12 remote guest live solution. Welcome to this edition of Signal Flow Live, helping you with better workflows, better technology, and of course, better business. I'm Jef in High Def, and this show, Signal Flow Live, is a partnership between the Digital Green Room and NeuralNet, makers of Live-to-Air 6 and 12. And today we're talking about, as we always do, workflow. Workflow can take the shape of everything from plugging a cable in one box and computer and one video device or anything along those lines, but it also can mean a holistic look at what it means to build a workflow for how you manage a production. And today we've got an influencer that is on a mission to create better AV, the quality of video, the quality of the production, really the start to finish, how you enter a facility, a conference room, a ballroom, and do it with excellence and precision. And I'm really honored today to have Omar Colom on our show, coming to us live from Orlando. Omar, I know you just got in. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I took a little bit of a pre-workout here to get myself up and running here. I did a crazy overnight flight from Phoenix, Arizona, so I'm tired, but I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be with you guys, and I'm excited about this topic we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah, you know, and the thing I really love about what you're doing with AV Educate and all the work that you're doing to really help the audiovisual community level up, right? Because 100%. So many of the folks that I've run into are really good at what they do, but they stay in a parking lane. It's almost like they've been told, hey, this is who you're going to be. You're going to be this, you're going to be that. And they don't, right. There's not a lot of vision casting put in to how you grow, how you become a leader. And, you know, a lot of you know that I do a lot of work in the volunteer fire rescue world, and there's a lot of leadership training I'm working on. And it's the same thing. A lot of times you get stuck in your role and you really don't realize that you can be a lot better. You can do a lot more and serve a lot greater. And tell me a little bit, just, you know, to fill everybody in here, what you've been up to here for the last couple months. I know you're doing a lot with not only the education, but also production.
Yeah. So I'll give you guys actually a sneak peek. You'll be the first to publicly hear about this. We just finalized our process for AV Educate to become a nonprofit. So that is official. I'm waiting for the letter from the IRS, though, to publicly say this again. But as for everybody watching this right now, for you guys here, you're the first to hear. We just got approval.
Congratulations.
And went through the whole process. Yeah, so thank you very much. So one of those things is that I'm a team right now, very small team, and we need to grow a little bit. And we wanted to be able to do more things quicker and better. And going out to the community and talking to people and working with people is really how we do that. And something you said a little bit earlier about workflow is one of the things that we've talked about a year ago, and I think this was you and me, Jef, actually, maybe 2 years ago now, honestly, it's been a while. But one of the things that we talked about that I think freelancers miss this opportunity sometimes, and, you know, just not thinking about it, right? Because I'm tunnel vision into like, this is my career, this is my path, this is what I've been doing. But the way to level up, essentially, without having to do much, is to train your replacement, right? So if you think about the corporate ladder, for example, you know, there's always a goal to come from a warehouse person to a president of a company or a CFO of a company, something like that. But in corporate AV, it's a little bit different. You have to be experienced and you have to have the knowledge and the skill sets. And there's two things that need to come together. But if you want to move up in the industry and you are a freelancer, that ladder doesn't exist. But if you want to create it, train your replacement for those clients to take that job so you can go to that next level up. And I think another thing you're saying to what I'm passionate about the most, you know, perfect for the title Signal Flow, is that the more you broaden your scope of knowledge, right, the more those pieces fit together easily. So, for example, right. I know a lot of guys who are LED operators who they understand signal flow and resolutions very, very well, but they don't understand the other side of the puzzle, which is how does the screen switcher that I'm connecting to all the time work? And that little bit of knowledge, even if it's just a little bit of an understanding of a concept of how it works, can exponentially help a show setup go from, hey, this took hours to build, to now, hey, it just took me a few minutes to talk to this guy and say, hey, I want to do it this way. Can you send it to me that way resolution-wise? Because they know the same fundamental information. It's how these two bodies come together that works together.
That's right.
It's really that part of that signal flow, right? So like connecting those dots together.
Well, it sounds, you know, you remind me of an old saying about the difference between wisdom and experience. Is wisdom is learning from other people's mistakes, and then the experience is learning from your own. And so what you're really, really doing, I think, at the foundation, Omar, is telling people, especially freelancers who many times think horizontally, it's my relationship network, right? But you're really trying to help them think strategically, right? And to be able
Correct.
to think about to even taking on a particular job that may give you experience to be able to say, I can put that down on my resume.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think to that point, to go a little bit further with that, for any stagehand right now is listening, right? Because I try to cater to the home market for the stagehands, and if I sound like I'm talking ill of you guys, I apologize. But a lot of the complaints you have is because you don't have enough knowledge of the other side of the equation. So there's a lot of complaints about, I came a little bit late, but I'm always on time. It's like the point is those that for our industry, for corporate AV, for example, every show's a new show, every show's a new client. So your reputation with your individual labor coordinator is great, but for every client, it gets retested again and again and again. So those little things that may not be, important to you because you're thinking long term. I've been with this company and I call it the McDonald's mentality, right? I've been
Mm-hmm.
in for X amount of years. I should get this extra promotion or this amount of respect. It's like, yes, but the reality is we work in a show by show scenario. So every client is a new client. Every show is a new show. Every time we do this, we have to gain that respect, regain that trust, regain that earning again of what we do. We have to do it over and over and over again. And it is exhausting sometimes, but I think people forget that. Yeah, and it's because they don't see the other side. They don't see the leadership side where they're getting that phone call saying, hey, XYZ showed up late. You as a leader could be, you know what, Omar's actually a really good guy. He showed up late. There's probably something going on. They don't care. The client's like, this guy showed up late. He's not on time. That's all they care about. So it's having that understanding of the full picture that a lot of people get frustrated for.
Yeah, and I love what you're talking about there, because what you're really talking about is that we think we're judged in these massive moments on stage, so to speak, when the light's shining and it's like I'm holding my trophy. But where you really build your credit score and your credit report is in the shadows, right? And when you talk about being on time, what that is nonverbally communicating to someone is that they don't matter enough that you can actually make it on time. And the best thing is when you're a couple minutes early. 2 minutes early literally will speak to you, even in a Zoom meeting, will speak that you actually are on top of your game rather than behind your game. And that's all part of thinking strategically, right? And
and that's where it comes from. You dive in from there, right? And again, we're talking the starting point, right? This is like the foundational, right? This is like the basics, the fundamentals. But even to that point, that understanding can take you now to that leadership position. And now when you are in that leadership position, which again, a lot of guys don't think about that, you're responsible for that guy not showing up late. So I'm responsible for you and a dozen other people. And I've been trying to figure out what's going on, and I got to coordinate and I got to plan things out. And a lot of times what I see happen too is, it's in the military, it's a little bit different. In the military, you are prepared for the position, right? You're prepared to take that next promotion. You're prepared to take that next leadership role. You are given the materials. In real life though, you're given the position and expected to fill in the gaps. And a lot of times people either, they either sink or swim at that point. And a lot of times they sink because they don't think about, well, I'm going to go to this new position. It's like, I'm just going to get more money. But it's like, no, now you got to be responsible. You got to shift mentalities a little bit, right? Now it's not, I need to do everything myself and be in charge. It's no, I need to delegate to the right people, put the right people beneath me in charge of positions, put the right people next to me to do the thing, and trust in the crew that I have that they're going to finish those tasks, and then still follow up and be responsible for that and take, credit for the good. Take credit for the bad and give credit for the good to the people who do the good stuff. And that's a shift in mentality. A lot of guys, what I see happens, they get leadership positions and, they move up to the next level and they still the doer. And it's like, you are now the delegator and the supporter. You are in a position where you support your crew in whatever they ask. Food, meal breaks, bathroom breaks, sick calls, whatever that is, you're there to hold hands and make phone calls. That's what you're doing primarily, and make sure that whatever the client asks for, your guys are getting done and you're following up with them and helping them, and all those knowledge gaps too. And I think that's another crucial part, which is where the education always comes in, is we have to be able to relay our information to other people in a way that they understand it so that they can do the job that we're trying to get done.
Well, you said a lot of things there that had, like, you have all these like gold nuggets in that. One of the things that I picked up on, it was right toward the beginning, was that you talked about, that every job is a new opportunity to help convince somebody that you're worth hiring again. And unlike me, who's been a 42-year video producer, I've got thousands of videos and I've got hundreds online, and people can literally see my work. I don't have to tell them that I know certain things. They can see it because I say, go look at it.
Yeah, 100%.
In the AV world, it's a little more difficult to do that, right? Because a lot of people, either if the conference is recorded, nobody is either trying to get a copy of that for your reel and those kind of things. How important is that for somebody who's in the AV community to help demonstrate not just that it was a great event, because you have to now be able to talk about what you did in that event?
So this brings up something really. I want to bring this up quickly because I heard this conversation recently, and it's interesting because it's tricky with what we do. There's always an NDA at some point with somewhere about what we can and cannot show, and there are ways around it, right? And we're not all super famous on social media, so like we're not sharing stuff, but we can't get in trouble sometimes. So we have to be cautious about what we do and what we post. But I think posting that you're in that show position, posting the end of the day with the crew and like everybody's happy and smiling, like that just relays to people visually, like, hey, he did this position here, the show went well. If I do a show and I don't see it, right, essentially, and as a client, I don't know what's going on there too much. But I'll go the other route too. How do I prove myself? This is an interesting one. How do you prove yourself when you don't have that back end to show these pictures, to show this content, right? Like you haven't done what you and me done, where we produce content over and over again, and we've shared it to the world, and we've gotten the keyboard warriors to tell us this isn't good enough or they're 2 cents, and it helps us improve. And I think what's interesting is that piece of paper, that certification for something you're doing, holds weight, because if I don't know who you are, it's word of mouth, right?
That's
how
right.
do you what's the next step? Well, if word of mouth isn't enough, because hey, Bobby says you didn't do great on this show, but Mike says you did great on the other show. Well, you know what? Hey, I got certified. I'm a certified operator for this position. So that's another step to your credit to say I'm competent in this position. I can do this, right? The pictures are great too. Showing those things are great. And I think the beauty is that we're not always, hopefully not people are doing this, right? But we don't have to always show all the grandiose shows. We got to show the little ones to say, hey, I'm a team player. You need me for a show, I do this position. I don't care if it's Mariah Carey or Johnny Depp or if it's your corporate local church down the street. If you need this position done, I will do everything to the best of my abilities because I'm trained and certified and operating in this position, and I'll make it happen. So there's these combinations of things that you can do to improve your awareness to the community, people that you work with, because again, this is very word of mouth. There isn't a avtube.com or there isn't an AV channel,
right,
ESPN, right? Like we are our own self promoters, and a lot of times we get really scared about posting things. And I think you should post, especially with the crews. Hey, I hung out with this person, hung out with that person, and that holds, like a picture with you, Jeff, on social media holds much more clout than a picture of myself, right? You have a much longer reputation history. You have much more credit. You do a lot more things for the community. So a picture of you would be huge clout. Same thing goes for anybody else in the industry. You take a picture with your friends that are on a show site, they will have clout with some other client that you may not know yet. And you say, oh, I know who that person is. Oh, we hung out in this show. We did this show. Now you went from, we don't know each other too well, to, oh, wait a minute. You know this guy? Okay, hold on. Now we're a little bit closer. Oh, you did this show too? Oh, okay. Now we know this and this much together. All those little things add up together, and people just, don't be so afraid of posting the social media and posting about the shows. Be cautious about posting about the brand that you're doing, right, the clients you're working for, the materials. Like, don't post those things. But the gear you're working on with nothing on the screen, that's fine. The show set up with no data information, even with test patterns, like those look really cool to us, to our families.
Absolutely.
They show that, listen, he's done big shows, he's done little shows, he's done XYZ. All those things combine together to create that clout and to create that forward movement for you in the industry.
Yeah, well, I mean, I really appreciate what you're saying about with me in social media and things like that. It's only because I'm a compensated endorser for reverse mortgage at this point. It's not for anything really amazing. But I will say this, I had an incident, and that's what I'm calling it here, where I was actually not working a show as an AV person, but I was there for my client who was a keynote speaker. And I went up and I wanted to get an audio port out of the mixer to give me the audio coming in, and these two guys were probably in their early 20s. To be fair to them, they're probably not the most experienced, but they literally didn't know how to do this. And I think a lot of times about that, because I feel so often that as free, when you think about it being freelance, you end up looking at yourself as an island. And when you're only looking at yourself, you're not looking at everybody else, and you got to figure out how to lift yourself up. And one of the things I think is really important, if you're trying to do that, and you kind of alluded to it, is when you say things like, hey, I know Omar, he's great, or I know, George, he's great. What does great really mean, right? How do you begin speaking from the subjective into the objective? It's like, hey, I know how to do, a 84 cube video wall, and it's this particular model, and I know this. And you're actually showing people in terminology that they can relate to go, okay, this guy is actually somebody, this gal, there's somebody who can actually do more than what, maybe what we're thinking. because it sounds to me like in the AV community, it's very much a totem pole way of getting respect, and your credit score is how that works, right?
Yeah, I think so. That if you can have those deeper conversations, right? There's always that surface level knowledge where, hey, I know what a Novastar processor is, and I know how to program it, right? That's kind of like, okay, surface level. You know how to use a GUI system. You know what the processor does. You know about port capacities. But like knowing that next level of, hey, I know the resolutions we're doing. I know the specific pixel count of what we're doing. I know the bandwidth of what we're sending down the pipe for this, and that two-way conversation between you and the other person. That's where that next level that we're talking about comes into play, right? That's when they're like, oh, okay, this guy knows what he's talking about. He's not just here to operate. He's not a monkey pushing buttons. He knows how to do
Right.
this. And it goes back to what we talked about earlier, right? Being able to broaden your horizons to do other positions, right? Like something I think is very fascinating all the time is video guys learn a lot of different things about resolution that are across the platform for video. We don't do a lot of CAD work though. But
That's right.
you'd be hard pressed to find a lighting engineer who doesn't do CAD work at all. They always do CAD work, right? And those are two completely separate skill sets that always come together for lighting, and it's a huge plus to them because they have such a broad understanding of signal flow, not only from the DMX versus XLR cables and those limitations there, but also like how far my run can go, how many movers I can put before I need to add another universe, like these little nitty gritty things that you don't get to see really until you do pre-pro with a CAD, and as video guys, we do a lot of pre-pro for our screen switcher, our media server for limitations, right? But we're not doing the whole thing and figuring out
Right.
all
Yeah.
the power, all the runs and the distance and thinking about every show. Oh, like I'll give a great example. This happened to me one time and one time only ever will happen again because I didn't know this, but we did a show, I'm from Florida, so Florida's summer year round. We did a show up in colder weather. I never calculated the weight of the roof ever. First and last time I ever made that mistake. And now I always know if I'm going anywhere where it's cold, I need to make sure that, hey, here's my weights. If it's going to snow that time frame, I need to get those information as well to how much snow fell and how much that's weighted down the roof because that'll lower my capacity for the rigging. And I need to know within at least a week or two, right, so that I can adjust my weight capacity to make sure we're not overweight. Because there's always like projectors are mission critical, movers could be mission critical. Maybe not so much as Lecos, but maybe hey, if I take down half of the Lecos from the air and put them on the ground for this show because now it's rained 4 inches of rain and the roof is now over capacity because it's got weight on it. Give me a heads up so I can at least make these adjustments and make them happen. But until you get to that pre-pro side, you're not gonna think about those things. You're gonna think, I'm gonna go on site, I'm gonna hand these projectors out, I'm gonna run them 20 feet. Oh wait, I forgot about the up. I gotta go 20 feet up and then 20 feet over. So now it's actually 40 feet and I miscalculated. Things like that fall through the cracks when you were singly, like we said, tunnel vision.
You're singularly focused, thinking of yourself being on an island, being a freelancer,
yep.
Not speaking in terms of objective data points to put on a resume or to put in the world for the everyone around you to see that
Right.
You've got value, right? Not being vague about it. What do you think the biggest mistake that an AV freelancer, an AV person may be making that is really not their fault, but it's something that you feel like is prevalent and and by the way, I'm not asking this in terms of it being a practical thing, like not taping down your wires correctly, but really more vision, right? What are people doing to stifle their own vision, not to be able to get their own workflows in play to be a better, performer when they're serving, on a project and for their own good, for their reputation?
I have an answer for this actually, and it's going to be totally biased, but I think it's education.
That's fine. That's what we're here for.
I will say I learned just as much from students as I do doing. And what I mean by that is that every time I've done a class, no matter whether it's an Aquilon class, an E2 class, camera shader class, any whatever video position you can think of, I can pretty much teach on. That wasn't a like God-given gift. That took time and practice and constant just trying to teach other people to get them up to speed. So that when I was working with them on the show sites, I knew, hey, I could rely on XYZ person because I taught them this. I could rely on this person because I taught them this. And then getting that feedback of, oh, well, I want to do it this way, or I want to do this way, or what about this? That opens up the possibilities for other workflows that I didn't think about because I'm not that person. And that's really helped me expand the way I think about things a lot in all kinds of positions because now I understand in a lot of terms, there's a lot of, I read a lot, for example, and there's a lot of educated guesses. Unless I have a physical tester sometimes, I'm making a very, very good educated guess on the situation. But to that point, I think if more people would be willing to just teach, even if they say they're not good at it, you'd be surprised if someone is open to learning, they're going to learn so many things from you just from that conversation. And in reverse, you're going to learn things that you didn't even think about because you don't think that way. And just having that process, and I'll give you a prime example. A few classes ago, we were doing math for LEDs. All right. And I want to mention the class of a student. We were doing math for LEDs, and he was not understanding the breakdown of the math. And to simplify this a little bit, it's, most things are 20 amps, right? We teach for 15 amps to be safe. 15 amps. Here's the given number. I'm telling you, 15 to be safe. It's 80%. You can learn that in the field. As the more you do this, the more you learn about power. For right now, 15% is your limit. Don't go past 15. We did the math for. We did the math for port capacity. So you can do X amount of tiles before you hit 15 amps. And we did all the math on paper. But because we didn't draw this out, he couldn't correlate in his mind how each tile connects to that point. So what I had to do is, and again, it was challenging because I taught him Ohm's law. I taught him the way the manufacturer taught us. I taught him a breakdown of it on paper. So this was like, okay, 3 different ways I taught it. He's still not getting it. And then I said, I want the student to understand it because he's going to fail on show side if he doesn't get this. So I said, hey, listen, let me do this another way. And I went to the board and I drew it out. Here's all the math we drew out. Okay, here's now taking these numbers. And it was like 0.9 amps per tile, something like that. It was very low. And I drew out, I think it was like 7 or 8 tiles. And I drew all the tiles and I put each tile 0.9 or 0.8, 0.8, 0.8, 0.8, 0.8, 0.8. And then I ran, they daisy chained together. And then I ran one power all the way back to a 20 or to a 15 amp. And I said, add all these up. What do you get? And he's like, I got 15 something. I go, that's it. Each one of these tiles does this number, which is what we calculated. I can only do 8 tiles total. Once he saw the visual that, that's the limit for the tile. Right. Before you need the next 20 amp circuit to run the next wall. And he's like, that made the total sense. And because of that little challenge, now I've done, I think 2 or 3 classes since then. Anytime I've had that question pop up, I got the answer for you. I draw it out and the light bulb clicks. And it's like, oh man, how easy was that? I was frustrated for one day with one student. And now anytime that comes up again, I draw it out and students instantly get it. And it was funny because I'm not a big math guy, but I got it on paper very easily. But again, that's me, right? That's me, not them.
Well, you know what's so cool about that is that, number one, you taking the time to do this is something that I think is mostly by and large unheard of in a lot of these particular circles for the AV community, because everybody flocks to a project. Everybody's expected to know what they're supposed to know while they're there. And even if it's something you have no experience in, if it pops up, somebody expects you to kind of, pick up the slack there. So the training there is really, really critical. And it's really amazing to be, putting that kind of quality out there and being a servant leader in that sense, Omar. And, it's one of those things too, where, I was thinking you were talking a moment ago about you can't show a lot of, copyrighted material and things like that. Is AV Educate, do you ever either have plans or have you ever done, maybe a conference that is all your own? It's literally a conference for the AV folks to practice, to get their time in, to be certified, and bring in some real speakers and say, hey, it's half rate or something like that. You give some sort of an incentive. So it's got the real deal, the real feel. But in that setting there, I think you'd have the mix between that person. Now they could be able to calculate that thing out and sweat, but yet you have access to that and everybody can take that media back and say, this is me. And then they've got a certificate from AV Educate.
Yeah. So very, very, very funny story. So AV Educate did do during the pandemic. And again, because of education for me personally,
I remember some of that.
So we did what's called the AVE Summit, the AV Educate Summit. And it was a 2-day intensive deep dive into virtual production, essentially. And the real goal was that Ed and me were doing a ton of shows at the time. Me, Ed, and Christopher Brown, Ed Waller, Christopher Brown, and me were doing AV Tech Talks. And we were very successful at it. And we had a very good SOP in place is what we did. We created a kind of an SOP, a format that we used, timer, intro video, then introduction of the people, introduction of the speaker, and then kind of an hour, 40 minutes of anything you wanted. And every 30 minutes we'd pop in for Q&A and get back feedback from the crew. This was a formula we put together after 2 or 3 shows. Me and Ed started getting a lot of requests to do AV Tech Talks because we were sponsored at the time by the DVE store, and the DVE store had given us an account of 1080p, so we were using that for other things as well. But what we wanted to figure out was how complicated is it really to produce these online events, because we're always going through these different formats, an Excel sheet, Hey Summits, IBM. Everybody had their own flavor, their own version of something. But the fundamentals that we used were the same every time. It's either Zoom, vMix, sometimes OBS. And we wanted to say, well, how hard is this really to do this? So we partnered up with Nathan Lively from Sound Design. And we got a partnership with him. He does his summit every year, I believe it is, or every 2 years. And he let us to piggyback onto his account. So we did a co-sponsorship with him. And we created a whole event in 3 months with speakers. We had an opening speaker, which is Tyler Main. We had a closing speaker, which is Scott Gojoberry. Scott Gojoberry was a very powerful speaker. He's a high-end projectionist for Hollywood. He suffered a stroke and came back. And
wow.
He kind of talked about his journey. He suffered a massive stroke, lost control of half of his body, went through all the hurdles and battles you could think of at that time. Losing work, losing his home, losing financial reliability, and then just through grit and grind, kind of coming back into the fold, and now he's doing great in the industry. Tyler Main opened it up talking about the future of the industry and where he thought it was going. And then in between all that, we had dozens of speakers talk about business, entrepreneurship, financing, NDI, virtual production, disguise. So we had a lot of speakers do a lot of things for in 10-hour days. And in between that, we created these little break sessions of like meditation and stuff, because at the time that was a big thing. Mm-hmm. But it took us about 3 months to kind of get it all together. Diza out of Canada also helped us a lot on the back end with the paperwork side of things, to get speakers involved, to get documentation involved, to get everything looking right and everything. And then myself and Chris we went ham creating all this content for about 2 months. So creating a show is labor intensive. As you guys know here, it's super labor intensive.
Yeah.
But once you have the once you have the bits and the pieces together, right? It's just getting that person on, and it's kind of cutter paste and keep going. But that initial first get is really hard to do. But we did it. It was successful. We made some money off of it. It all went back into AvidEducate to promote other projects we had going on. And till this day, we still have dozens of projects that we were in motion and pushing through. But it was more of me and Ed and Christine, like, how complicated is this really? How can we make this happen? And I'll tell you what the hardest part was? It wasn't the AV side. It was getting, and ironically, it was AV people, so it was funny. It was getting the guys who were AV people that were knowledgeable enough, scheduled at the time frames you wanted to. It was a lot of back and forth, a lot of communication, a lot of prep work, a lot of talking, a lot of like give and take between what was going to be given versus what they're getting out of it. That was the majority of the work. And honestly, I didn't think it'd be that complicated. I thought it'd be like, yeah, we do it all the time. Why not? Tell me what time to be there. And I'll make it happen. And it was like, what do you want to present on? What do I want to talk on? How much time do I have? What can we change it up? And then like, once we confirmed it, it'd be like, 2-4. Can we add this? Can I change this? Can we change shots? I was like, yeah. So once the content was made, which what I thought would be the hardest part, because we were doing it ourselves, it was very easy. The hard part was really managing the people side of things. And that's where I was like, man, for me, I'm a good talker. I'm not a good people person. I was like, I would, if I ever did it again, I would have to have a different team and someone just manage that, because it was exhausting to try to figure this all out and then have to like go back and look at these sheets and can I change this? Can I make it? Because I want to say yes. I want to make sure it's a success and I want to give people what they want. But at some point, there's a limit, right? Hey, this time frame doesn't work anymore, or this can't be changed out because, at the time, Tyler Main was I can't change it. Tyler Main's opening speaker. Like that time slot is taken. Sorry. Pick a different time. And then to my surprise, also, there were some people we talked to that presented a challenge. Like, if you can do XYZ, I will do this for you. And some we hit and some we didn't. And you know what? We, tucked our tails between our legs and sorry, we didn't make it. But it was cool to even just get the option to talk to some people to bring on and get the opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, and that's that forward thinking that is, that I think is missing in so many areas of life in general. We think sometimes that what we have is all that can be, right? And so before I got one more additional question for you off of this part of the conversation, but I want to say, obviously today we're talking to Omar Colom, Mastering Workflows from Orlando, and if you want to join the conversation, you're more than welcome. Using NeuralNet's live to air system, you have the ability to join us. And John, I know. I put the web link up here just a moment ago, global.callin.studio/signal flow. If you want to get in on the conversation, if you've got a question for Omar, this is your chance to do it. Omar, you said something here a minute or two back that I keyed in on, which is that everybody does it different, from spreadsheets to the way they manage different things. That's workflow. Mm-hmm. Is there an effort by you or anyone else to begin to standardize these things? Because wouldn't it make it easier for everybody if everybody kind of agreed on a protocol? And instead of having to learn for an hour when you get there how somebody does it, it's we all now kind of know that we're now, we're syncing up and we're hitting all the cylinders.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things we have in the works. There's a big one we were working on for 3 years, and I'll go with this one first because it is massive. I've been working on it. I've gotten a lot of feedback on it. I've gotten a lot of help with it, both professionally and on the backside, just doing the kind of nitty gritty paperwork. But right now, the biggest project we have undergoing, which I thought would be simple, right? Always like, oh, it's a simple idea. It should take us a couple of weeks. Now, been 3 years in the making. We have been making a database of positions, believe it or not, between audio, video, lighting, rigging, scenic, touring. Everybody has slightly different verbiage in different regions and different nomenclatures between like theater and corporate AV for essentially the same description of a position. So we've been compiling that data in an Excel sheet. It's about 80 pages right now.
Wow.
Yeah. Each tab
That's
is
amazing.
Yeah. So each tab is divided into departments. So video is a department, and I'll just go into video because obviously that's my world the most. But video breaks it down into every single position you could do in video. And then in addition to what we did to make it a little bit more of a kind of educational model, is that we broke down the position by the kind of title that it could be in the future. So essentially, in our verbiage, we have as a playback operator or graphics operator, that would be like in a V2 role, right? And the way we've done is also that we're trying to do this, and some of it is me doing this, figuring it out, and then getting feedback from friends and partners and stuff. But some of the things I do, for example, is like if you were to learn, I'll give you a flow here, for example. If you were to learn graphics and playback first, right? Those kind of rooted video positions first, and do that for let's say a year. You could very easily move, again, think about it like a learning path, to a switcher position or to a screen switcher position, right? Because now you've gotten this fundamental knowledge about video, signal flow, and signal flow between resolutions, and just signal flow between HDMI, SDI, DisplayPort, DVI, not so much anymore, but things like that. And then you could go to a switcher now where you're learning, okay, now I know how to see these signals. How do I do it for the camera side? I want to incorporate camera, switching the camera in there, switching with this thing. And there's a couple of key things, right? Like you don't want to fade on a camera, you want to cut. You don't want to do a fade between a graphics to a camera. So there's a couple of key functions there, but the knowledge is there, right? So then it's learning, okay, how do you switch a little bit? And then from there, once you've kind of mastered that for a year or two, you've gotten that little bit under your belt. Maybe not be a TD, for example, but just switching cameras for something, 2 cameras, 3 cameras. Once you get that, you can go bigger, right? Go bigger, go bolder, do more things like that. If you ever get to a shot where you do a jib shot, I just know a single person in the world that will not take a jib shot every time they get a jib shot, because those are just beautiful.
Yes.
But you could take all that knowledge now, right? Now you've learned graphics, you've learned playback, you've learned switching. Now you can go to screen switchers and control all the screens, because now you've built that fundamental knowledge to get to that next level. So something we've been doing as well is not only just combining the names, the descriptions, and a price range, not by region yet, more like globally in the US at least, it's between this minimum and this highest version. We've also been doing is figuring out how do we make this a learning path that if I want to be a video engineer, for example, how could I start off at what level, right? As a stagehand, you should start doing
that's great.
Screen stuff, and then you could build yourself all the way to this level. So it's not really done by alphabetical or by order. It's done more by if you did it in this order, you could build to these careers. And then we had that between, again, every department and moving that up. And obviously, video and audio are my 2 main bread and butters. Lighting's kind of my last one. Rigging, I know a little bit, but I have a partner we talked to. His name is Coach. If you know who that guy is, he's been helping us a lot with that part of it. So we've been compiling it, putting it together, and going to an extra step and saying, if you want to learn more about this industry, this would be the way you want to do this to move up in the industry very quickly, or to gain the skill sets so that you move up very quickly. Now, you could bypass some of this by getting certifications and stuff like that, but then you're missing some of the fundamental skills and workflows that you would gain from doing it this kind of like longer tier path that we've been used to for so long. The pros to cons to education is that we've sped up some of that for some people, and the downside has been that I am a very good, I hate to say it, my brother's probably listening, very good GUI system operator. I know the GUI very well. I don't know all the signal flow very well because I got taught this very well, and I did this, and I'm missing some of that knowledge because I bypassed all that stuff by getting to this level, right? So there's some of those things, and I think, to my brother's credit, by the way, he knows signal flow very well. But to my credit, to the other part, there's plenty of students that I meet who they come in to learn the GUI system, and it's like, listen, we could teach you this all day long and how to manipulate the screens and change things around and do all these things, but I can't teach you signal flow because there's a lot. to learn there. Right?
Yes, there is. Yeah.
There's a lot of bits and pieces. DAs. There's generic rules about that, like 1 delay versus 2 delays versus what you're sending on a pipe. Refresh rate. There's a lot to learn about. So we don't dive into that very much. But I'll teach you the GUI system. I'll teach you how to program it, how to run it, how to set it, how to do custom area of do area of interest, do AOI, do all these things on there. But plugging that particular Mac or that PC to this box, you gotta learn that on your own. That's part of the game, right? Part of the challenge.
That's right. Yeah.
And I think it's twofold. The way that I will present that, hopefully sooner than later, next year or two. I do have to push it out at some point just to say, hey, here's the start of this to gain more feedback. But right now,
I think it's incredible, Omar. I mean, to me, that's like an AV passport, right? I mean, it's literally where you get that in the hands of the clients at large. You get that or maybe not the client per se, but maybe you do a version for them where it basically tells them, the kind of production that they may be thinking about. These are the kind of things you need to think about, or what to ask your AV professional. And then the professional's got his own passport, and it's basically, hey, they're talking theater. I need to know what that looks like. That's actually a really amazing and really valuable book to have. And I think that when it comes out, it's going to be something really spectacular. And I really mean that, because the value comes from taking all the information you can find everywhere and putting it in one place, and then putting it in a way that's in an order people can understand. So, I mean, it's incredible. So I think that's great. I want to take a minute here, and right now I'm going to ask my co-host, the professor of live streaming, as I like to call him, John Mahoney. I'm going to have you pop in here for a couple minutes. You've been listening to what we've been talking about, a lot of great insights on just everything from the holistic idea of workflow all the way down to certain things and how to, as a freelancer, grow yourself. John, what are you thinking about what you're hearing here? And do you have anything for Omar?
Well, I think first and foremost, I'm really impressed. Every time I talk to you, Omar, it's I come away learning something and impressed by what you know. But the thing that I found interesting is that when you look at workflow, to a certain extent, it's very similar to complex programming, where you have lots of different systems, lots of different components, and each of them have to have an interface to interact with the world around. So it's less about the details within that domain, but it's very much about how does this domain talk to that domain, and how do we agree that this is going to happen, both from a best practices as well as language. If I'm talking to you, we have to be sure that when I say something, you understand it the same way that I mean it. So there's lots of different levels. And some of this is like you talked about the GUI level. So some of it is, I can do the things you're telling me to do. And so that way we're sort of operationally synced up across domains. But there's still a lot of levels below that where, like you're saying, how much delay can you put into a signal and repeaters before you end up with, something unacceptable downstream that you may not even see, because when it leaves you, you're like, this is fine,
Exactly. Yeah. That's the worst part. Yeah.
So I think it's really great to take that engineering approach to how you problem solve. And I think to a certain extent, that's really what workflow is all about. Let's take something really complex, let's break it down into a set of discrete, simpler to solve problems. And as we do that, we lay out all these problems, and then we roll it back up to say, now that I've solved these and I can get them all talking, I can actually put on a full production, a dimensional in terms of, the different domains and disciplines that are involved. So I think that's really cool. And it's so foundational to how people need to think across the production, not just in the AV space, but in general. You're sort of solving a set of problems that need to be solved to achieve an end result.
Yeah. And just to jump on that for a second, because it's funny that something you said made me think about this. Another thing we don't think about too on show side is that the team is also, we're also part of that signal flow, right? Like, again, I'll touch on the video side, but audio as well, right? There needs to be this constant communication to make sure that we hit that exact cue at the exact moment it's supposed to happen. This isn't all automated, right? When we do these live shows, this is a team coming together so that video and that audio and that screen where it needs to be at plays at the exact moment that we're supposed to play it at. That's not just one guy hitting a button. That's multiple people in unison, working at the same time to the exact thing happen at the exact same time. So that's something that like I just thought about right now. Like, man, we didn't even talk about that.
I mean, the other thing which I thought was interesting is, I mean, because you said you don't necessarily see interacting with other people as being, you know, your strength. You sort of sit in the but I think getting, as you look at all these things, ultimately what you're trying to do is deliver some value to a client. And sometimes clients are going to ask you for stuff that doesn't really meet their own objectives. And so finding a way, when you talk about workflow, of establishing the end goal in a way that the client ultimately will get the result they want, that can be equally important, because sometimes clients can ask for things that complicate a process and do nothing to further the goal. And you have to get out of that.
Yeah, boy, ain't that the truth? Yeah.
The goal isn't a technical goal. The goal is, why did you hold this conference? Why did you hold this event? What messages do you want to be sure everybody walks away from? What knowledge do you want to be sure they all have? You know, and that's something that's equally a part of the workflow and really has to be established up front, so you can design everything to service that aspect to it.
But again, I think to our credit here, right, is that we are thinking that way because we are in the business mindset of things, right? Where if the E2 guy, he's probably not, he's like, where's my content? I just want to send it accurate out to my screens and make sure it looks good for whatever you're asking me to do, right? He's not even thinking that far. He's just thinking, give me whatever you're going to give me, and I'll make it look good where it has to go. Where we're thinking, well, the reason I want you to do it at this time, and the reason I want this content to be this color, the reason I want this to be this, is because there's a vibe and a feel that the client is getting from us that we want to produce, right? And that colors we're picking, the systems we're picking, the programs we're using, that's all part of that understanding of, this show is meant to do X, Y, Z. I want to make sure that the audience that's watching this is walking away gets that feeling. And another thing, I learned this a couple years ago. Again, one of those things I didn't realize until someone told me it. We're in the business of entertaining people, right? But we don't really get to see the other side of it. A lot of these companies we're working for, especially in corporate AV or live events, for example, these people are huge companies that work all over the globe. And this is probably the first time that, like, if John works in Canada, I work in Florida, whatever, and we go to Infocom, right? I may not have seen you for a whole year, but we've been talking back and forth for who knows how long. And now, Infocom's here. I want to go hang out with you. Let's go out. Let's go eat. Let's go do this and that, right? There's this whole vibe that we're creating that we don't get to enjoy on the back end because we're so technical sometimes. We don't get to enjoy that on the other end. But we're producing this event, and the three of us here, we're thinking about that, right? How do I make sure that these people are getting that feeling, that vibe here that we're giving them, right? I want to make sure that they come to my venue, to my show, and they're like, this was amazing. I had a great time. The AV was great. The drinks were great. The night was great. I got to hang out, blah, 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 and had a great time. Like, that's what you want them to leave with, right? Not just, I did a good job. I didn't miss a cue.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, the one word, Omar, that comes to mind when you're talking about, what you just said is experiential, not just for the client, but also for the people that are part of that team. And it's, we don't think about it a lot of times, but we sell experience, right? Or experiences, because, John, you said it so well. It's what people come away with. There was and I can't remember the survey, but I know that pretty much the data points on it. There was a survey a couple of years back that said that only 6% of what we say would people hear word for word, letter for letter, character for character, that kind of thing. 23% was our nonverbal communication between whether we said it in a way that was distant and dismissed, or we really were showing we really cared about someone, looking them in the eye, that kind of thing. But the rest of it was how we made somebody feel. And the client wants their people to come away feeling like, wow, I cannot miss this the following year. But at the same time, how many times do we on the production side, we don't take care of the people around us? We expect them to do a job, but we never thank them for their work. We never give them, the ability to cast a little vision for them into maybe helping them have a better experience next time and things like that. How important is that?
Is that John or me?
Either one.
John, you thought you were going to say something. I don't want to cut you off.
No, I think that, it's incredibly important that we're able to make that connection with people. But more to the point, if you think about, if you have a room full of people, those people have an opportunity cost. So if you're sitting there saying, I have 150 people, and these people may be generating $2,000, $4,000, whatever it is, dollars a day for this company. when that company has those people in there, the event may be costing, $50,000, but the opportunity cost associated with that event with all those people there could be hundreds of thousands of dollars or more. Yep. So when you think about it, making sure that each one of those people felt that was a good trade-off, that becomes critical just from the business side of this. If these people come back and say, it was okay, the food was good, then you're not going to get the call back, because the total cost to the client is beyond the cost of their paying for the event. It's this opportunity cost. So having that resonate with people, making that connection, and them say, this was great. It really opened my mind, and I saw so many things that I didn't think of before. That's the value proposition that these people need to see as a return. And it's not just, did you execute flawlessly? Because nobody, at the end of the day, nobody's going to really care. That's going to be forgotten. It's really
or notice.
That's right.
Right. Most of the times we're hypercritical about it, and you hear from the client like, "Oh, I didn't know anything was wrong." And you're like, "Oh, okay, good job. Let's keep going then."
That's right. Our job is to be invisible, right? And so when you're invisible, that works well to say, yes, we did it right, but it also doesn't necessarily make it memorable either for our side, right? And so that's an interesting take on that. Omar, what would you say? We talked a little bit about what maybe some of the things people can think about when they're starting. What do you think is a workflow, being an overseer of a crew of people? What are some of the setbacks and mistakes you think people make without even realizing it when they're trying to build a workflow that will handle a production of multiple people at different levels, and maybe they're not really crossing all the T's and dotting the I's and things like that?
Yeah, I think the first one would be knowing the crew, and I know that's complicated because you're always getting new guys, people you don't know, but knowing enough about the crew to say, hey, I've worked with you three before. Because I trust you and I know who you are and how you work, I'll put you in a leadership position. And a lot of this comes back from my military days as a staff sergeant, managing crews or managing in military stuff. But a lot of this comes back to that. So finding who's a lead that I can trust and rely on and delegate information to, that I know will get it done, and then assigning them someone who maybe I don't know so well and saying, hey, work with this person, shadow that person, get these tasks done, and then come back to me when I'm done. I think a lot of times we get focused on the task at hand. We forget to tell people what's going on, right? Yes, this is another ballroom. It's another screen and audio stuff, and lights are going up in the air. Yes, it's the same, but it's not the same show. And
that's right.
Sometimes we end up just okay, truck's offloaded. Let's start building stuff because the leads are technically in motion, and that's great. But taking the time to stop and just say, okay, stagehands, everybody come here. Let's look at this CAD together so you know what the end goal is. Let's look at who's actually interested in video, who's interested in audio if I don't know who you are, right? Who's interested in lighting. Okay, so you guys, let's put you with the lighting team. Since you're already going down that path, let's get you more experience with that. Let's put you where you're comfortable with. Let me not put a lighting guy with a video guy, and he's like, hey, let me run an SDI cable, and I don't know what that is, right? That's not going to help anybody out. So taking a minute to understand who your crew is, what their skills are, or what they're interested in, and assigning them to those positions because they already have the interest in that, so might as well keep them where they're interested in so they can work efficiently and effectively. And then also delegating. Like we said a little bit earlier, once you've gone out and delegated that position, you still have to go out and hey, listen, I don't mind that you guys are talking and hanging out, but also move your hands, go do something. Don't just sit in the corner here talking.
Right.
You guys talk about whatever you want, but also run that cable while you talk. Plug it to where it has to go, label it, do something, right? Don't just stand here and talk. So things like that, I think a lot of people get into this position and they just end up saying, you go do that over there, you go over there. And it's always forward momentum, but they're not taking the time to go back and say, hey, did you finish that task I assigned to you? Okay, well, now I need you to go over here, right? And it ends up being, I see you, oh, you're not busy, then you go do that. And then they get done with the task and they're waiting for you to come find them again versus here's the expectations, here's what we're doing, here's how we're going to do this, let's get this done. If you don't know what you're doing or you're done with the task and you need another one, come back to me, I will get you one. And a lot of times what that benefits too is that you could just say, hey, you know what, right now we need to focus on rigging because we have a time frame, which they might not know about, right? They get there, they're doing work. They don't know anything until you tell them. And a lot of times I see a lot of times, 90% of the time, I see labor guys kind of get, I don't want to say shafted, but get to work and then they're just like scrambling to do whatever needs to get done because they don't know what the deal is, versus the leads who are like, I got to be ready by this time. I got to have this up at this time. And then also some of that comes into play where it comes into frustration, right? I see a lot of guys get frustrated with hands because they're on a crunch and the hands are being lackadaisy because they're like, well, I'm just here to run a cable. It's like, yeah, but I got to be ready by noon and it's 8:00 in the morning.
That's right. Yeah.
But they don't know that because no one told them, right? And sometimes it's that little bit of information that'll make everybody just work easier together. And now it's like, oh, he's not frustrated. He's in a rush. Okay, let me get to work here, right? Versus that guy's being an asshole to me. Like, he's not really helping out. It's like, well, because we have a time frame to meet and you didn't know about it, Like, it's a lot of miscommunication. But anyway, sorry. Main point is, I'll wrap it up. Communicate with your crews at the beginning of the goal and expectations that need to happen for the show, so that not only the hands, but the crews that already should know what's going on, also have the hands that know what's going on too. And I'll tell you one thing real quick. This is another one that you'd be surprised how eye-opening it is to have a CAD to show stagehands. They will work twice as hard if they know the end results, because they know what to expect. If you just start telling them what to do and they're just lackadaisy, like, okay, I'll hang this here, I'll hang that there, and they don't know the end goal, they're just going to wait for you. They're going to wait to get told what to hang next. If they have a CAD, like, okay, I know we got to do 40 feet because I saw this big-ass piece of truss on paper. I saw all these lights. Let me figure this out. Okay, wasn't there another truss piece somewhere? Let me ask about this truss piece. Showing them a CAD, it solves a ton of problems because they get the visualization that everybody else has already that they didn't have coming in.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Anyways, that's my big takeaway. It's communication with
I mean, Omar, you said something really profound there, because what you're really talking about is you're starting with why, right? I mean, that's a really big thing, that when you can help somebody understand the why, that persuasion will motivate people in a way that just telling them the transactional part of you do your boundary and that's it. They'll do that part, but they can't think outside of that. So I think that's amazing. John, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think you've got two sides to this. I mean, one of them is, you talked a lot about setup, but I think the other piece is that things go wrong during a production as well. So when you look at it from that end, you need people who are problem solvers. And to be a real problem solver, you need to understand what is it that we're trying to achieve and where are we falling short. Because sometimes it isn't necessarily, I have to fix A. It may be, well, we can go to plan B and do that. It's not optimal, but it's getting us to the same goal. And it's
not so critical.
And so you start in sharing that information. I think it helps on a lot of fronts. People come away with the same vision. So everybody's working towards the exact same goal with the same milestones, the same time frames. But then you're also like, what is it that if something doesn't work, what is it that we have to do? And what would be nice to do to satisfy the client goals?
You bring up a great point, right? And thanks for calling me out on that. You bring up a great point. In a show position, in a critical position where you are the leader, those are things you're factoring in, right? Hey, I only have one day to set up, so I need to do setup and troubleshoot my signal flow. Because running my cables from here to there until I get power is great, but that doesn't mean that cable's going to work. I mean, we all know this as in the AV, right? You can run cables all day long until you send something down that chain and it connects and sends out what it needs to at the resolution supposed to happen. For all I know, that cable could be bad. It could be 100 different reasons why it's not working. But until I get everything up and running, I don't know that. So if I have a one-day load-in, with a load-in and then tomorrow's rehearsal, I need to be up and running and testing things out today, not tomorrow. If I have a 2-day load-in, okay, I could be a little more lackadaisy in the first day, do a little more troubleshooting in the second day. But until we get into that Q to Q phase where we're doing the rehearsals, I don't know what's going on. And a great example for that is like recording guys. They do 30-minute record to test audio and video real quick, but until they're doing a rehearsal where they're recording for 2-3 hours, like the drives could fail, the cable could be bad. Like, there's all these little things that happen that in rehearsals you find them and you solve them. And to your point too, I think a lot of the best people in the industry are problem solvers, and that's part of like what we love doing. Everybody here, right? We love problem solving, right? We're trying to figure out all the time. It's like, how do I go from plan A to plan B to plan C, and make sure that whatever that ends up being, however, I'll get this military thing I do. That this is a circle, right? And then this is like the dot in the circle, and it's the middle. Like, this is a circle of shit, and you're right in the middle of it. That's how we are all the time. It's like, how do I make sure that this show goes no matter what the scenario is, whether it's a shitty scenario or the easy path where it's A to B. But if I got to go to A, B, C, D to F to get there, so that the end result is right, I got to make that happen. But I think us being able to troubleshoot and figure out and solve is part of like what we love to do as an industry, right? It's getting that call saying, hey, I want to do a show for ESP Sports, but I want to make it a Mario Kart theme. Cool, let's figure that out. right? Let's figure out how to do that. How do we make that happen? Here's my idea. Is the budget there? Oh, it's not. Okay, let me work this idea to figure that out. And having those guys in those so critical positions, like you're saying, to like really fine tune. Hey, everything I said, everything's built out. Is this all working the way it's supposed to work out? Is the content being sent out properly? Is that one cable? Why isn't it doing 4K? Maybe it's not a 4K HDMI cable. Who knows, right? But all those little things don't get done until that everything's plugged in and ready to go and powered on. And that's super important to do. And as a lead, that's one of our top priorities, is to make sure that, not only I get the cue right, because that's kind of where it gets a little easier, but that everything I'm processing together and working together is going to the right place at the right resolution, at the right refresh rate, at the right hertz, at the right audio. Then my line array is positioned properly. My angles are right, because that's another another thing to think about too, right? Oh, the hands helped me out with this, but I didn't tell them what to do, and now it's hanging in the air, and now it's wrong. You should have that conversation.
Yep. Well, you've been a wealth of knowledge, Omar. So far we've talked about everything from the person starting out, how they see themselves, where they get their credibility from other folks, how you're doing teaching to help benefit that. You even said something I thought was really critical, which was every one of the folks in the AV world on their own, even if it's with 3 or 4 people, should get together regularly and share knowledge, just to be in front of other people. Like you said, when you're teaching, you're actually learning. And there's so much in that. We talked about the production process, some of the hiccups there. John, you've got any additional last thoughts here before we go?
I just think that a lot of these things are interpersonal, and you tend to
very
work
much so
well with crews that you've worked with in the past, and that team piece is important, because there, like you said, from the stage, there's a lot of things that are nonverbal. It's the same thing with a crew, where you understand importance, you understand flexibility for how, are you asking me to solve this problem technically, or are you asking me to come up with a workaround so we can do the same thing? But those are the sorts of things where, when you work with people, you sort of build that rapport, and they understand what you're asking without you having to enumerate the entire thing. Like, this is
100%.
And so I think, there's a lot of efficiency in that. If you had to sit there and run a show with new crews all the time, that would be very difficult. So that socialization is as much about building that nonverbal rapport that you're going to need to be efficient and effective when you're working together. So it's not just it's good to get to know everybody, but it really is, I think, an important piece of, streamlining the workflow that's involved when it comes to
100%.
interacting.
Yeah.
Omar, how can everybody find you? I know you're out there, you're doing all kinds of great stuff. How can folks get a hold of you and see what you're up to?
Yeah, so you guys can follow me on Facebook on AV Educate, or on Instagram as AV Educate as well. You can also find me as I'm National Director of Education for Evolve Technology, if you don't know who that company is. So we train on there as well. And the way I like to describe it to people is that AV Educate is kind of stagehand to technician level training. And then also we have a webpage, aveducate.com. And then Evolve is more that technician to engineer level training. So, essentially getting to that next tier level up from where you were. And I will say I've seen students go from stagehand to engineer through the courses I've provided to them. So it's been,
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's awesome to see those guys and meet them in the field and work with them and be like, and it's crazy. I'll say real quick, I know we're running short on time here. A buddy of mine, I won't give his name out, but a buddy of mine who I know he'll figure it out. Zach Anderson. Zach Anderson's a really, really good video engineer. I learned just as much from him as he does from me all the time. And it's funny because when I'm on show site and I see him, I'm like, I got to hang out with Zach, because I know he figured out something I don't even know yet that I want to know about. And we'll talk. And every time we have a conversation about anything you could do, I always learn something new, because he's always trying to like push the limits of everything he's doing. And it's such like a breath of fresh air to work with him, because it's like, man, I'm learning all the time. I'm having a good time. I'm doing a good show, and I'm learning at the same time. And there's not a lot of people like that anymore in the industry. And I think it's changing a little bit, and it's coming out, and more people are gaining knowledge and stuff. But the last 3 years were hard on a lot of people, and things have shifted around. But there's still a lot of moments where I get to hang out with the older OGs, and I'm like, wait, how did you do that? Show me that again. Oh, wait, I didn't know that. Oh, hold on, wait a minute. I've been doing it this way. Oh, well, that's another way to do it. But if you did it this way because of blah, blah, you're like, oh, the light bulb goes off. Wow.
Yeah, and the light bulb goes off. And Omar, you are a big light bulb in this this community with the audiovisual community.
Thank you.
And I love your pursuit of knowledge and the fact that you're so passionate about sharing it and that you're articulate about it. And obviously keep doing what you're doing. Everybody can find you at AV Educate. And man, it was a blast having you on the show today. I really appreciate it. And if anyone has questions or comments from what you've seen today, I'm sure Omar can hook you up with an answer if you have any afterthoughts, things like that. Omar, thanks so much for joining me from Orlando.
Thanks for having me so much. I really appreciate a good time as well. Thank you, everybody.
Well, man, I'll tell you, we appreciate you and guests like that. And for those of you who may not know what Signal Flow Live is, as we said at the top of the show, Signal Flow Live is here for the AV community, the video community, really anyone who is dealing with workflow. And it's not just the technology, but it is really better workflows through how you build your content, how you manage your people, as we talked about today. Actually, whether it's the wiring we talk about, which is the most symbolic part of this, but really the idea here is to help you with better workflows, better tech, and better business. And on behalf of John Mahoney, my co-host, I just want to say that we're always happy to bring you great shows. If you've got ideas for topics or guests, please send them to us. And until next time, this is Jef and High Def saying stay in the zone with your signal flow and you'll find some better workflows. And we'll see you next time.